Hello, my angels. It's me, Lord Nicolina, and welcome to the 2024 year-end special of Angel Rise. From what the title says, I feel this year has gone by a little too fast for my taste. It did have a feel of 2022 to it, that roller coaster type feeling. Yet, apart from my 2-month illness from July to September, I feel this year was considerably more better than back then. Though I didn't upload as much as I wanted to this year, I feel the quality of my videos was just as important as how often I made them. Putting in more raw emotion, more stylish thumbnails, beginning my new series of short videos, and even putting in photos in some episodes of Angel Rise to better describe what I was talking about. That is something I can say while it did get tiring at times, I am quite proud of how they turned out. And this episode, I'm sure will be just as good. The perfect way to cap off 2024. Yet, it wasn't just a big year for this channel, but also in my personal life as well. Quite a few great things happened throughout the year outside of the channel, and right here, right now, it's time I share 5 of the most notable. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite snacks and or drinks, and get cozy in your best PJs and blankets. It's time to kick off the Angel Rise 2024 year-end special. The recording of Angel Rise episode 41. Kicking this episode off is honestly one of the best recording sessions for a video I've ever had. Episode 41 of Angel Rise was the second collab episode I've done on the channel. This one had Kestrel in it, as well as their boyfriend Ira. We talked about our love for the video game franchise Splatoon. I'll pop a link on the screen in case you all would like to give it a watch. I won't spoil too much of it, but I will share some of my favorite parts from it. Some of which are part of the episode itself, as well as some from its accompanying outtakes video. The first notable moment was a massive prediction that Kestrel made. Near the end of the episode, they were talking about a potential theme for Splatoon 3's final Splatfest, where either the idol groups would face off against each other, or it would be past versus present versus future. They were right in both cases, since each idol group represented their own team. Squid Sisters with Team Past, Off the Hook with Team Present, and Deep Cut with Team Future. As a matter of fact, I even thought of the past versus present versus future idea even before we thought about recording this episode. With the 3 Splatoon games so far combining the elements of nostalgia, living in the moment, and getting hyped for upcoming Splatfests, plus a potential 4th game, it really made all that more sense. So technically, Kestrel and I saw into the future, quite literally, when the theme for this game's final Splatfest, Grandfest, was revealed. I'll discuss more about that later on in the episode. Next up, while Ira was off on a bathroom break while talking about Solakeen wearing beanies, Kestrel brought up a story where they discussed losing a boot in the snow at Yosemite National Park. They and their family had to abandon it, since where Kestrel got stuck, the snow was quite deep. Even though in California, it is quite rare to see snow unlike in Canada and Minnesota. Or should I say, Southern Canada, or Canada's southern cousin. Either way, though, California, I would say, is one of the rarest places you would get stuck in the snow in. Then came my most favorite part about the entire recording session. It was the role-playing we did as our OCs. The first bit of it involved Athena, Soakeen, and Xena. It stemmed from us discussing the crazy moods our OCs can get into, notably Athena. She is the smallest of our OCs at 5'2", but her experience in the Octarian army made her terrifying to go up against. This was also the first time I got to hear Kestrel in their Xena voice, and it was excellent for a Russian accented character. Same thing went for Ira and the Italian accent for Rome. It was seriously amazing to hear. It's also where I first learned of Xena's strong bias towards Soakeen. It was after I stated in character how crazy Soakeen can be compared to Athena. For context, Xena is more tolerant to Soakeen going nuts than Athena, even though they highly respect each other. Plus, it's where I first heard of the term rabid dog for such crazy actions. I took that to heart quite literally, and like what I discussed in episode 45, I applied that to the way I play in Splatoon. So really, Soakeen is not just Cena's favorite girl, but their little rabid dog. Though they also find Soakeen too cute to be crazy. That part of the roleplay was included in both the episode itself and the outtakes video. But the second part of this is exclusive to the outtakes video. This one involved Ira as Lorenzo, Rome's father, and Kestrel as Eris, Rome's crazed younger sister. The primary concept was the two arguing about which method of violence was preferable to anyone they villainized. Eris bites people like a rabid dog, while Lorenzo simply shoots people. But the best part about this roleplay was when Ira let slip a very NSFW comment, which only the three of us are inclined to know what he actually said. It's censored in the video, but we all busted our guts laughing afterwards. I was seriously not expecting that to come out of his mouth, especially through roleplay. Even thinking about it now just makes me want to belly laugh. The last notable part of this recording was the "do not" part. That's where Kestrel and I were warning Ira not to go near any slamming lids in Salmon Run, which stems from an incident during the first big run I partook in, where Kestrel and I got on top of one, and Ira was standing directly underneath it and got killed by it. But really, it was him getting killed by slamming lids in general afterwards that started this ongoing gag. He kept saying, "do," whenever we tried to talk him out of it. But we had to tell him, with that kind of a risk comes a big punishment. We told him next time he goes near a slamming lid when we're playing together, we're feeding him to it. It's a harsh lesson, but one needed, if necessary. Of course we were just fooling around with him, but still, it's a cardinal rule whenever we play Salmon Run together. When it was all said and done, the recording took just over 5 hours and 20 minutes. which is the longest recording session I've done up to this point. It took me just over 2 months to fully edit it, as I was slow at times to get it done with the crazy amount of footage I had to go through. But during the process, I spoke of a few creative elements I put in with Kestrel and Ira, including the sensors being octoing sounds, because they tend to cuss a lot more than I do. There were a few that I missed, but other than that, when I did finish editing the episode, it was all worth it. It was even more so because it was my intent to record with Kestrel and Ira in the first place. They got me into Splatoon, and so they got rewarded for it in the best way possible. A win-win, am I right? Heck, every now and then we go back and see how much fun that episode and the outtakes were. It was seriously so much fun to record, and there's no question I'll invite these two for more videos on the channel, even Angel Rise. So stay tuned for those. Overall, even as this episode made history as the longest episode in the series so far, fun was at the core of it all. To Kestrel and Ira, thank you two so much once again for being part of such an amazing episode. Easily one of my favorite moments of the year. My older sisters returned to Canada. This was 5 years in the making, and the emotions throughout my family were bursting through the roof. From June 30th to July 14th, my older sister and her husband visited from Florida for the first time since my sister moved down there in 2019. Because of COVID-19 and the delay in my sister's travel visa being approved, it certainly was quite a pain in the butt without her being able to travel. But when her visa was finally approved in April, it became one of the biggest family headlines of the year. Initially, only my mother, aunt, and I knew about this, so we decided to keep it a secret until the trip came around, notably from my younger sister and father, who are the two hardest people to surprise in my family. I almost let it slip a couple times, but held on very well. The day before my older sister and her husband arrived, I went to my father's place under the disguise that I would be doing one of my alternating 2-week visits with him that I started at the beginning of the year. But really, it was to make room for the two to stay at my mother's place. The following day, my younger sister was the first to be surprised when she and my mother went to the airport to pick up my older sister and her husband. She literally broke down in tears when she figured it out, just a mere minutes from the airport. Considering how close my sisters were to each other, it meant the whole world to her. In my father's case, we had to be a little bit more clever. When the foursome came over to his place, my younger sister and mother came up to the house, while my older sister and her husband hooded up and walked around the corner to the street on top of the hill in my father's backyard. It wasn't until a few minutes later that the two FaceTimed my father from the street, showing the backyard, and showed that they had arrived. At first, my father didn't believe the two, but when he realized it, you wouldn't believe how much his jaw was hitting the floor. He wasn't in tears like my younger sister was, but was incredibly stoked no less. So basically, the two hardest people to surprise in my family got a surprise they would never forget. And at long last, after 5 years, my older sister was back home. For the trip itself, it was a lot of fun. The two most notable parts in my view included a trip to Niagara Falls on the 4th of July and a fishing trip on the 8th with my papa. For the Niagara Falls portion, we first stopped at Marineland, an aquatic-themed park whose reputation for reasons I will not speak of in this video has dwindled significantly. We went there first because my older sister's husband wanted to experience it. Though when we got there, the rides were inactive. But a few attractions were open, including the park's signature animal display, beluga whales. Now, I didn't realize this until we went there, but beluga whales actually do live in some Canadian waters, notably off the coast of northern Newfoundland, western Quebec, eastern Nunavut, and northern Ontario. It was via a thawing scene in the observatory part of the display. They were super awesome to see, both on the surface and the observatory. And some of the noises they made? Honestly, seriously, some of the cutest and funniest noises I've ever heard. Pretty sure that's how they communicate, but still sweet nonetheless. I even got a beluga whale plush before we left. After we left, we toured downtown Niagara Falls, which involved us stopping by the Hershey store, playing 2 rounds of mini golf, one of which I got a hole-in-one on, and watching the fireworks down by the falls themselves. My mother, younger sister, and her boyfriend went home before the fireworks, while myself, my older sister and her husband, along with my stepbrother, stayed to watch them. I have seen photos of fireworks around Niagara Falls, but never actually seen them for myself. It's a nightly tradition they do around 10 p.m., which they hold from mid-May to mid-October. Before the display itself, the falls lit up in different colors, including the colors of the American flag for the 4th of July. As for the fireworks, while we didn't have the best view of them, they were still amazing to see. The colors were mostly red and green, with hints of gold in there. But some of the smoke did obscure some of them. Hence why our view wasn't as good. Either way, it didn't ruin what was a pretty good day in Niagara Falls. For the fishing trip, it was to a place called Port Burwell, which is located on the northern shore of Lake Erie. Along with my older sister and her husband, we were joined by my papa and one of my papa's fishing friends. We were out on the water from the middle of the afternoon to the early evening, and our luck was quite good. I got the first catch of the day, as well as the biggest fish, which was a walleye, at 26 inches long. My older sister and her husband caught quite a few walleye as well, but I'm not too sure how long they were. In total though, we caught 24 walleye to take home with us. But there were others we caught that we let go. So I would say it was around 40 we caught in total. Either way, it was a fantastic fishing trip. A couple other notable highlights from the trip included viewing the fireworks from a graveyard in Burlington on Canada Day, and a visit to African Lion Safari, a zoo-themed attraction in Cambridge. Those were very fun as well. But really, I think the whole thing was seeing my older sister back in Canada for the first time in 5 years. Since she did move to Florida, she's grown very accustomed to her independence with her husband, though there's still that family part of her that is in place. She did come back once again in November, though it was just her as her husband was working in Florida helping folks out with their power in the wakes of Hurricane Helen and Milton. It wasn't as eventful as the July one, but was still pretty good. Regardless though, my older sister being able to come home was a big time blessing in disguise for not just myself, but for my entire family. And that's why it's among my most favorite moments of the year. Splatoon 3 Grand Festival. Remember how I mentioned earlier that this would be further talked about in this episode? Well, I'd be horribly mistaken if this wasn't included. Anyways, Splatoon 3 Grand Festival, or Grand Fest for short, was the final main Splatfest for Splatoon 3, held from September 12th to 15th, 2024. It was pitted between teams past, present, and future, under the question, what is more important to you? I considered choosing Team Present at first, because I am one for living in the moment, but at the same time, I'm feeling like my future is getting brighter by the day, and my excitement for it is through the roof. So I chose Team Future. However, I went under the motto of, let's recognize the moment while celebrating what's to come. Nintendo seriously went all in for this Splatfest. Compared to other ones, this one was held in a completely different hub called the Grand Festival Grounds. To say it was grand in every sense of the word is a complete understatement. It felt like an actual festival, with 3 stages, Giant Clam Stage, Urchin Stage, and Seashell Stage, along with merch stands for each idol group, as well as food vendors, much like something you would see at your local fair. There was even the feature for players to give off 4 different reactions depending on which direction they press on the arrow pad on their controller. They were cheer for the top arrow, which has the player pumping their right fist up and down, sway for the left arrow, which has the player sway from left to right and back again, bounce on the bottom arrow, which makes the player jump up and down with their right index finger and arm raised up, and my personal favorite, wave for the right arrow, which makes the player wave frantically while squealing in joy. Wave was the one I used the most often, because I feel it was the most energetic reaction of the 4. And the squeal is without a doubt the cutest sound I've ever heard from a Splatoon character. Here's a clip of what it sounded like with Soul Keen. It just makes me want to tear up just hearing it. It proves that Soakeen may be a menace on the turf war battlefield, but is the sweetest little thing outside of them. Getting into the battles, they were quite something as well. Within a half hour of me starting them, I scored 2 10x battle wins in the span of 10 minutes. 10 freaking minutes. It was due in part because the chances of X battles, which I now know are called multiplier battles, for this Splatfest were exponentially increased. And as the night went along, I got 3 more 10x battle wins, as the wins as a whole were piling up for me on that first night. Even Kestrel and Ira were having good luck of their own, as at one point during the first night, they won back-to-back 10x battles. Though they were part of Team Past, I was rooting them on from a distance as I played well into the night. Then came what I can only describe as the greatest battle I've ever played in Splatoon 3. Just past 2:30 in the morning my time, I came across a 333X battle. It was only the third time I've come across one in any Splatfest. First being in the Shiver Fry Big Man Splatfest, and the second of which came in the same old bucket list Save the Day Splatfest. Both of which I lost. This one, however, was going to be different. At the start of the battle, my team and I were dominating it, practically keeping Team Present pinned to their own base. But it was in the last minute that this battle would be decided. Team Present got themselves out of their early mess and were killing us left, right, and center. I swore to myself as I tried to enter their base at one point, "Please don't die. Please don't die." At which point I did, and was sent back to my own team's base. With around 15 seconds left, Team Present was on the edge of stealing the battle from us, and my heart was beating out of my chest. I was swinging my Big Swig Roller Express like crazy to recover as much turf as possible, and made as many jukes as I could to prevent another death. When time ran out, all I could say was, all we can do is hope. Then, the results did come out. And this is what happened. That is right. We won the battle by 0.5%. I seriously couldn't believe we managed to hang on to win. I was screaming on the inside, literally. And if it wasn't as late at night, I would have screamed out loud so much that the entire neighborhood could hear the utter joy I was feeling. Regardless though, I was celebrating like crazy after that, even going wild on my Discord server. It was so hard for me to calm down and get back to battling afterwards. All I could think about was the 333X battle win. But I did end up winning 2 more 10X battles before I finished at around 4 in the morning. At which point, the real celebration began. I took a bunch of photos, one of which I'll share on the screen right here. In all honesty, this was the most emotional win I've gotten in any Splatoon Turf War battle, Splatfest or not. Again, I couldn't believe we managed to hang on despite the late push by Team Present. Seriously, not enough words can describe the absolute joy I felt. Not enough. And to the players who won this battle with me, if you're watching this right now, major shout out to all of you. You were one hell of a team to be a part of. God bless you all. That wasn't all that happened at night though. Kestrel and Ira also won a 100X battle, just under an hour after I won my 333X, which coincidentally was on the same map as my 333X, Crab Leg Capital. History was basically on both of our sides that night. The history making continued into the next day. It started by me actually playing while in the voice chat with Kestrel and Ira, as well as my step-cousin. Kestrel even streamed their point of view onto my server, which was really awesome to see. And even more awesome to see them and Ira win another 10x battle. While I didn't show off my end that much, I did get 3 more 10x battle wins during the chat, as well as my first 100x win. The first time I've won multiplier battles in front of my friends. Also, one of the biggest oddities in any Splatoon game I saw came face to face with me. During a match I played close to the end of the voice chat, the connection became quite unstable, and it caused all but 2 players to disconnect from the battle, 1 on each team. And get this, I was one of them! And the battle became a 1v1. I kid you all not. All I can think now is, what the actual hell? How this came to be is beyond me. And while not as memorable as the 333X win, it's definitely up there as one of the craziest battles I've ever partaken in. I didn't end up winning the battle because at the time the mass disconnect took place, Team Present was kicking our butts, and there was almost no chance at winning. Still though, I can't believe that actually happened. And if it happens again, I'll be sure to tell you all, because that is so freaking rare. After I got back from timekeeping a hockey game that night, that's when the history arose. I scored 6 more 10x battle wins, as well as another 100x. Based on those alone, they officially broke the record for the most multiplier battles I won in a single Splatfest, with 18 up to that point, beating the previous record held by the Handshake, Fist Bump, Hug Splatfest, in which I won 16 of those. It also broke the record for the most 10x battles I've won in a single Splatfest, with 16 at the same point. Another record, which was also held by the Handshake, Fist Bump, Hug Splatfest, with 13. The Saturday was more of the same, as I won 7 more 10x battles, as well as 4 more 100x battles, including 2 in the span of 45 minutes. Those 100x wins also set the record for most battles of that kind I've won in a Splatfest, beating out the Shiver Fry Big Man Splatfest, in which I got 4 of those. Kestrel and Ira also managed to sneak in another set of back-to-back 10x battle wins while I was at it. History was just piling up every second, and to see those two pull off another set of back-to-back 10x's is unbelievable. Speaking of which, I had a streak of 6 straight 10x battles I participated in. You heard me right. 6 straight. The first 4, my luck wasn't as good. 3 losses and 1 draw. But the final 2 in that stretch, I pulled off the victory. Again, much like with the 1v1 battle, I seriously didn't expect that to happen. I understood the chances of multiplier battles in Grandfest were increased, but goodness me. The game must have known I was that good to give me that many chances. And the next thing to make history? My Splatfest rank. For those who don't know what that is, you earn rank points for every battle in a Splatfest you partake in. And you upgrade at a certain point, which determines how well you've played. There are 6 ranks in total: Fan, Fiend, Defender, Champion, Ruler, and Ruler Plus. Going into the Saturday, I was up to Future Ruler Plus 7, and by the end of the night, I was up to Future Ruler Plus 12. That broke the rank record shared by both the Same Ol' Bucket List Save the Day and Friday, Saturday, Sunday Splatfests, where I had identical ranks of Ruler Plus 11 from my respective teams. It was really going to show how far I've come when it came to Splatoon. This was literally my peak performance, hands down. However, Sunday was where my fatigue started to show. I was losing quite a bit, and my luck in multiplier battles dwindled quite a bit from its peak in the first 3 days. Still though, I was prepared to fight until the very end. I managed to score 3 more 10x wins, as well as 2 more 100x's, which totaled my multiplier battle wins to 35. Basically more than twice the previous record. And for my last battle, it was fitting that it was, you probably guessed it, a 333x. If my most emotional battle win was to be the same type to finish off Grandfest, who was I to judge? Unfortunately, it did end in an ugly loss. But still, to see that as my last battle was truly something to behold. 2 hours after it wrapped up, the results were announced. In the end, it was Team Past who ended up winning with 500 points. Team Present got second with 370 points, and Team Future got no points at all. None. This seriously shocks me even to this day. I thought we would finish at least in second place. But really, those results mean little to me. This was honestly the best Splatfest I've ever partaken in. From the atmosphere to the 35 multiplier battle wins, it spoke to how far the series as a whole has come. And like I said earlier, this was easily the best performance I've had in any Splatfest. 26 10x wins, 8 100x wins, my first 333x win, and finishing with the rank of Future Ruler plus 16. It really did show how far I've come since I've started playing Splatoon in February 2023. In Kestrel's terms, who are we without the past? They couldn't have been more right than that. Every emotion, every battle, every little thing, all led up to Grandfest. I even cried a little bit before the results were announced. It was seriously so freaking emotional. I don't think there will be another Splatfest on as grand a scale as this one, as it is the very definition of a final Splatfest, and a memory from 2024 I'll always cherish. Hamilton Comic Con. With 4 years of cosplaying experience under my belt, it was basically inevitable that a convention was on the horizon. Exactly a week after GrandFest concluded, I went to Hamilton Comic Con 2024 at the Hamilton Convention Center. While not as big as Fan Expo Canada in Toronto or San Diego Comic Con, it was almost customary that any major city in the world had their own comic convention of any kind. For context, San Diego Comic Con was the first convention I heard of because of how high profile it is. But it took me another few years to realize it wasn't just about Marvel and DC superheroes, Star Wars, and Star Trek, but all corners of pop culture, video games included. As for the cosplaying part of conventions, initially I found it a little strange to see people dressing up for those, as I was so used to dressing up just for Halloween. It was primarily through a Luigi cosplay video where he gives off the iconic death stare as seen in Mario Kart 8, 8 Deluxe, and Tour during Anime Expo in Los Angeles in 2014 that I started to understand that concept. I'll share a link of it on the screen here and in the description below so you can see it for yourself. But it was through another video on cosplay I found called Wario Farts on Game Expo 2019 where I finally understood why cosplaying was such a big thing for conventions. Along with cosplay photos at conventions I saw on Instagram before I stopped using it, my daydreams of cosplaying at conventions really got off the ground. The opportunity first popped up in mid-spring, when I was researching the closest convention to my area. That's where Hamilton comes in. Its Comic-Con was going to be held in September, and like I mentioned, the weekend after GrandFest. It was settled. The wheels were set in motion, and it was on. But who was I going to cosplay as? It did take some time, but I decided Shiver was the way to go. Like I mentioned back in episode 43, she has become my favorite character to cosplay as. Plus, I did see quite a few pictures of Shiver cosplayers at conventions, and I thought she wasn't as well recognized at conventions as other characters were, considering Splatoon 3 was only 2 years old. So I thought, why not boost her popularity more at conventions by cosplaying as her? And that's exactly what I did. Adding on, this would be the second time I've cosplayed in public. First time I was doing so since I went to see the 2023 Mario movie dressed up as Princess Peach. So this would be another big test of dressing up in public. When the day itself arrived, I was basically stoked to go. Got up relatively early to put on my makeup and cosplay, and by 11 a.m., I was on my way with my father to the Hamilton Convention Center. I chose him to come along since he is the more classic pop culture oriented of my parents, which he gets from my uncle. The fun started even before we walked inside the building. That's where a member of staff complimented on my cosplay and even joked around with my father about how he looked, though he wasn't in cosplay himself. I got a good look at the other cosplayers outside as well, and while they were more aimed to more well-known characters, they were still so cool to look at. We soon made our way to the first of the convention's halls, and to say that felt unreal was an understatement. It felt like it was the beginning of a new chapter of my life. This was my first time going to a convention, and while it wasn't too big, this was certainly a great way to start. Speaking of starts, the first thing I did was go over to the Star Wars section to have my photo taken with a stormtrooper, plus getting to pose on a replica land speeder. I did struggle to get off, accidentally partially spraining a muscle in my right leg, but it did heal after a few minutes. While touring more of the hall, I got quite a spook. It was from a cosplayer dressed as Soldier from Team Fortress 2. He said while behind me, "Is that Shiver?" Which caught me completely off guard. We exchanged banter in character, and honestly his Soldier impression was on point, even though it didn't match the actual voice itself, but it was still really good. He also did leave me a little confused when he said, "Yes!" And I was like, "Yes what?" Our interaction ended after that, but still, getting to see him and the surprise he gave me was no question something special. I was even familiar with Team Fortress 2 quite a bit, even though I don't play it myself. It's certainly respectable in every aspect regardless. Even then, the fact that this cosplayer was able to recognize that I was dressed up as Shiver is beyond me. Then, as we were about to get a snack, I came across what would become my favorite cosplay I saw at the convention. The cosplayer in question was dressed up as Marie from Splatoon. I had my eyes on her for quite some time, even while going up to and touring the second hall. I honestly really wanted to try and get a photo with her, but sadly it didn't end up happening. Not sure if she would have wanted a photo to begin with, but who knows. Even then, it showed that Splatoon may not be the most popular cosplay option for a convention, but to think I wasn't the only one there speaks volumes to me. Shiver and Marie are quite popular in the Splatoon universe to begin with, and I have seen quite a few Marie cosplayers online as well. So the fact that this was such a coincidence is crazy, yet heartwarming to me. As for the second hall, it had quite a bit more compared to the first hall. The first hall was filled with photo sessions as well as independent artists and sellers. The second floor was more of a store of collectibles, notably video games, both old and new, figurines, cosplay props, necklaces, and of course, comic books. There were also meet and greet booths for several special guests, but I wasn't too worried about them. For the purchases I made while up there, it started with getting a game I've been searching for a while by that point. That being Mario Strikers Charged, the second of 3 installments in the Mario Strikers series. I've been wanting to get my hands on a copy of that for almost a decade by that point. And what better time to get it than at the convention? Other notable items I got while up there were Funko Pop figurines of Toronto Maple Leafs players Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, as well as the mascot of the Toronto Blue Jays, Ace. Plus, I also got my hands on a custom Peach Lego figurine, which I have still yet to build at the time of recording this. Also while up there, my father had a look at some old comic books as well as some old vinyl records, which he collected a lot when he was a kid. He also managed to find the first ever vinyl CD he got, which I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was from the mid to late 70s. He didn't buy anything, but getting to see him relive some of his own nostalgia also warmed my heart to the core. Was that part of the plan? It certainly was. It was more than just about what my future had in store, but taking my father back in time, even if it was just for a few hours. I may very well do the same thing for other family members in the future. Who knows? Heading back to the first floor for a second look, I was once again face to face with Star Wars cosplayers, including one of a First Order commander. She complimented how the blue on my cosplay matched that of R2-D2, a droid that's one of the franchise's most iconic characters. And I can safely say from this picture here, her point was proven. I also got this photo with the two, alongside two Rey cosplayers. Can never go wrong with that. Star Wars and Splatoon do go well together now that I think of it. As our time there drew to a close, I made a few more purchases, this time from independent creators, which included 2 Peach and Daisy stickers, a Rosalina sticker, and a Peach portrait. I'll shout out the creators' names on the screen right here. Honestly, they did such amazing work on these, and I'm so glad I could support them. So please do support them if you get the chance. And to cap it all off, I got another visit from the TF2 soldier cosplayer I saw at the beginning. This time around, he asked for a picture with me, which I accepted without hesitation. His reason for doing so? It was for charity purposes, though I don't know which one specifically. My father took it, and while I don't actually have the photo itself, I do have a good idea of what it looked like. And it was seriously awesome to take. To that TF2 soldier cosplayer, if you're watching this right now, massive shout out to you. Thank you for making my first convention that more special. My father and I left soon after, and all I could think about on the ride back was, this won't be the only time. I mean it when I say it. It was such a freaking blast. Getting to see a convention for myself in person for the first time was seriously exhilarating. And I know I have to do it again. While I do have to wait until the spring to go again, the excitement is still there. Hamilton Comic Con was a great starter, no less. The Steel City, as it's nicknamed, was at the center of one of the most memorable days of not just my life as a whole, but 2024 as well. And last but not least, Halloween night. From what I described in my Halloween videos for this year, the anticipation for this one was high in my books. And it was going to live up to that hype. One way of which, however, was a way I could not have expected. For starters, I did have a little bit of a hard time deciding who I wanted to dress up as. It was between 3 characters: Nickel Peach, Nickel Daisy, and Shiver, more specifically in her Splatoween form. Considering I cosplayed Shiver the year prior for Halloween, And I really wanted to bring Nickel Daisy and Nickel Peach into the Halloween picture as well. It was definitely a tough choice. Then I thought, why not do all three of them for October, but do one of them for Halloween? That made a lot more sense to me, since last year I did a similar thing with Witch Nicolina, Ghost Irelina, and Shiver. I put different orders in for consideration until I decided on what I can describe as an angels first, demons last approach. That meant I was going to do Nickel Daisy first, Nickel Peach second, and Splatoween Shiver for Halloween. Alongside the Frosty Fest version, Shiver's Splatoween version is my personal favorite of Shiver's in-game outfits for special Splatfests. It was actually the first costume I initially considered for Halloween, and while not necessarily meant to be scary, the coloration screamed that to me, if you know what I mean. Just before Grand Fest and Hamilton Comic Con, I got the items I needed way ahead of time, alongside the supplies for my Nickel Daisy and Nickel Peach cosplays. I wanted my cosplay to be as accurate to the game as possible, so I got a black to red gradient wig, which I cut to closely match Shiver's style, a black shawl, which I spray painted the edges of with red fabric spray paint, and a pack of 5 spider lilies, one of which I cut the stem off of to put on the wig with some hair clips I borrowed from my mother. Also, since I already had a bunch of spare paper fans from a pack I bought for the first time I cosplayed Shiver, I grabbed one and colored it to match the Splatoween fan design, which I've gotta say I'm super proud of how it turned out. I initially was going to paint it, but since I already had Sharpies at hand, I felt it would be better so that there wasn't as much smudging or drippage. I also sketched out the gem Shiver wears on her shawl, only instead of it being the deep cut gem, I went with the Japanese symbol for demon, or Oni. Because I felt the way I portrayed Shiver in her Splatoween outfit, she looked more like a demon or a vampire. But the trickiest part of the whole cosplay was the makeup. More specifically, the foundation color. The other parts I could get just fine. The eyeliner, the eyeshadow, the eyebrows, and even the lips. For context, the skin tone Shiver has for her Splatoween outfit is quite pale, most noticeable when glowing in the dark. Fan artists' portrayals of it vary quite a bit, from it being her usual skin tone, to a block white, to even a sickly gray. The foundation I was approaching was mostly the block white with hints of gray in it, to make it more weathered and creepy, much like a vampire. When I first tested it, I mixed mostly white face paint with a hint of black face paint, and as I applied it, it appeared more gray than white. I believe it was because I put a little bit more black in there than I would have liked. Either way though, when contrasted to the red, it did look really good to me. Reminds me of the look of Shiver in a Splatoween fan art with Fry and Big Man. Though in the artwork itself, it had somewhat of a green tint to it. Hence why I mentioned the sickly gray color earlier. I wore this during the first 4 hours of Splatoween 2024, and I even picked up the earliest 100x battle win I've ever gotten in any Splatfest, which was at 11:36 p.m. my time. I would imagine this makeup test did play a part in such luck. Fast forwarding to Halloween itself, I got the foundation of my makeup to the exact shade I imagined. White being the more prominent color, but the hints of gray were exactly what I wanted. Plus, I added an additional black line to the bridge of my nose, and some fake blood to the left side of my mouth, to give the whole vampire-like feel. When it came time for the trick-or-treaters to arrive, my anticipation was through the roof. For the first hour, we only got 7 trick-or-treaters, mainly those younger than 10 years old, so the little kids. However, there was one older kid whose costume I admired a lot. It looked like a mix of Bendy and Alice Angel from Bendy and the Ink Machine. For those who don't know, is my all-time favorite horror game. So seeing that caught my attention for sure. Other than that, we had quite a few trick-or-treaters walk by my street without coming onto it, which honestly frustrated me quite a bit. Then, I thought about how I was actually positioned to hand out candy, which was on my front porch. But, with my house being up on a bit of a slope, and a tree in front of our neighbor's house partially obscuring it, I figured maybe that's what was causing them to pass by. So my mother and I decided to move the candy handing out operations to the driveway, which was a lot more visible, and she even brought one of her desk lights out to better visualize where I stood. The light and the candy bin were placed on the hood of my grandparents' car, which is where I stood base for the rest of the night. The strategy worked out perfectly, but also patience was part of it as well. Within a few minutes of me moving, I got 4 more trick-or-treaters. Then, after my mother left because she was visiting my step-uncle at his workplace, that's when things really picked up. The older kids came out in their numbers, and by around 7:45, I was up to 29 trick-or-treaters. A notable one of which was a mother and their son. The mother of which pointed me out as the son looked around. But get this, because of my costume, she thought I was a young woman. I suppose some of you may not be as surprised, but that comment honestly makes me giggle quite a bit looking back on it. I'm pretty sure afterwards the son and their mother realized I was a guy once they heard my voice. But it's all good. After her son got his candy, his mother soon complimented on my costume. My makeup in particular. Honestly, that was super heartwarming. Considering it was the most difficult makeup I've done to this point, and how proud I was of it, that was awesome to hear. But the best part of the night was soon to come. Not once, but twice, pop-up rain showers came pouring down in between waves of trick-or-treaters. As a matter of fact, my town was actually expecting to get a little rain that night, but not too much to disrupt the festivities. Now, normally, I would bolt for cover at the first sign of rain. But this time around, the odds turned against that. I stretched out my arms and let the rain absolutely drench me. My sensations were telling me, no way you're actually doing this. No way you are actually doing this. But you can bet I was. During the second onset of these mini rain showers, I started laughing uncontrollably. I felt like a legit horror movie villain, laughing as their scheme came to fruition. the rain like spilling blood, as if the blood moon itself shined upon the sky. As the rain died down, the exhilaration was overwhelmingly wonderful. This felt like something my sisters would do, as back at my old place when we were younger, they would play whenever it rained, and afterwards, they'd be soaked. That's exactly how I felt after the rain stopped. I was almost completely drenched, though my fan, paper symbol on the shawl, and some of the candy were partially rain-wrecked. The only part of me that didn't get soaked was my face, so my makeup remained intact. I was a little cold afterwards, but that didn't stop me from handing out candy to the last of the trick-or-treaters, which included a group of 6 older kids whom I saw earlier in the night passing my street. In fact, the majority of the trick-or-treaters I got did come around the loop behind my place to approach from the east. All I had to do was be patient for them to come around, and it certainly paid off. At the end of the night, I finished with 43 trick-or-treaters, the majority of which who were over 10 years old, some even in their early teens. Seriously gotta give it to them. And in the words of my mother, they could have been out causing trouble, but they took the chance with indulging themselves in sweets while walking the streets in costume. When my mother got home, we both went back inside as I told her the tale of the absolute drenching I got. I also told my grandmother, father, stepmother, and older sister about the experience, which no doubt delighted them too. I had to wait a little bit for the photo shoot part of the night, because I had to wait for my shawl to dry. But after a few minutes, I did get a little impatient and decided to put it on anyways. It was dry for the most part, but somewhat damp in other areas when I got to the photo shoot itself. Some of the poses I did were based on screenshots I took of Shiver during Splatoween, while the last one I did was inspired by the absolute rain drenching I got. For the next couple weeks, even when my older sister visited from Florida, that night was one of the only things I could think about. I even kept my Discord profile pic as Splatoween Shiver for the majority of November. I wasn't quite ready to let go just yet. Even then, Shiver in her Splatoween form was consistently in my thoughts leading up to Halloween. Even when I did my Nickel Daisy and Nickel Peach cosplays, I kept imagining Shiver butting in between the two and saying, "Step aside, angels. It's my turn." Considering the angels first, demons last approach to my October cosplays, it felt like a never-ending spell. Like somehow, Shiver was able to hypnotize me like a vampire master to serve her. Any time I would listen to any of my favorite horror music, she would be right in the foreground, and I would sometimes let out a bit of evil laughter in the process. That's what led me to make the Immaculate Spell Poem video, because this was a crazy level of love I've had for a particular look of any character outside my own. This was legit the most hyped I've ever been for a Halloween costume in my life so far. And the night itself made it all come together. The hypnotizing feeling of my costume, the rain drenching me while I handed out candy. Would I say it's the best Halloween I've ever celebrated? I certainly would, by a long shot. I have had great Halloweens before, but never at the level of 2024's. Smiles and scares all around. And before I cap things off, here are a few honorable mentions. In all honesty, I can't pick just one to solely be my favorite moment from this year. All these were too special to not be included. And in a lightning fast year like this, I enjoyed them every second. Now, they're forever staples in my life. So the lesson here, whether it's for an hour, a day, a month, or even a year, embrace each moment you have. They don't last forever, so make them worth telling your kids and your grandkids. Pass them along to each generation so that they know that even the quickest moments in life can be the most meaningful. And that, my angels, is where episode 48 concludes. Again, 2024 was such a fun year for me. And while it's not the same for everyone, I can guarantee that all of you here have at least one or two intriguing stories from this year to share. Please feel free to let me know, as always, what they are in the comments below. Either way, this leaves plenty of room for what's to come in 2025. One last thing before I wrap things up. I would like to thank you all once again for all the support on the channel throughout the year. Again, it was definitely a year of growth on the channel, despite the unusual small amount of videos I have uploaded. But regardless, to those who have joined and have stuck with me along the way, thank you all so much. If you did enjoy this episode, please feel free to leave a like and share this with your loved ones. Spread the word about Angel Rise and the Lord Nicolina YouTube channel. For those who are new here and would like to join this journey of mine, then please feel free to subscribe to join the Blue and White Angel Brethren today. Click the notification bell as well when you subscribe so that you are notified whenever I release new content. And feel free to check out my other videos as well. Thank you all so much for watching the 2024 year-end special of Angel Rise. I hope you all have a great day or night whenever you are watching this, and I wish you all a safe and absolutely fantastic new year. Until we meet again, my name is Lord Nicolina. Be strong, stay positive, and as always, God bless. Let your inner angel rise.